You're getting to be a big boy.
I'm just a kid who's 4. Each day I grow some more. I like exploring. I'm Caillou. So many things to do. Each day is something new. I'll share them with you. I'm Caillou. My world is turning, changing each day. With mommy and daddy, I'm finding my way. Growing up is not so tough, except when I've had enough. But there's lots of fun stuff. I'm Caillou. Caillou, Caillou, I'm Caillou. That's me.
Things are getting a little wild at Caillou's house.
Oh yeah, things are getting wild. He's dead.
Well, actually, I mean, things seem to be a little wild over at your place, Lucas. What exactly is karage?
Karage? Oh, it's like Japanese fried chicken.
Say less.
It is. I would say, yeah. Things are pretty wild over here at Casa de la Hunter Street. We have some karage. I'm drinking water out of my Nalgene right now because my lips are still hot from that. Whatever that spicy, I don't know what the sauce is. I need my roommate's the expert. Oh, excuse me. See, that's the karage coming back up. But wild's relative, Will, because though my supper is fairly wild, I don't think it's as wild as, Caillou meeting his untimely demise.
Yes, that is a big, big reason why we are here today on this episode of For the Kids, a PBS Kids podcast. Will Young here, along with Lucas Mancini, and if you've been following the Patreon updates, as I hope you do and are, you would know that our latest For the Kids episode poll ended with, I would say, a commanding lead. We had the poll between Caillou and Word Girl. Now, Word Girl, I will say, had a significant minority of votes. It was like 70% to 30% for Caillou over Word Girl. But I want to thank everybody who voted in the poll. And of course, we will be doing more like that as time goes on. But yeah.
We'll of course watch Word Girl eventually. And I don't think it's an indictment of quality on Word Girl at all. In fact, I think it's that, the listeners will have like a Cenobite-esque kind of sadomasochism to them where they want to watch me and you suffer. And Caillou's topical. He's in the news as he died. So we gotta strike while the iron's hot, so to speak. And I think the listeners agreed.
We have such sights to show you. I don't want to. And that's if Caillou was in Hellraiser, everybody.
What a bit. Honestly, I feel like he would have been a match. He's very insistent, when he wants to be. And I feel like the Cenobites would be like, man, they're like, we thought we knew torture.
It sounds like a YouTube video that should exist, but doesn't. So yeah, this was what everybody wanted us to talk about. And one of the big selling features of this episode is that it is, well, actually, I want to say Caillou is over and done, but that's not entirely true, and we are going to get into why. But it seems that for the moment, the deluge, I'm using finger quotes here, of Caillou media is going to be slowing to a trickle, because that was a big news item just about a month ago, I think, was Caillou being axed by PBS Kids.
It's true. When I saw the headline, Caillou's canceled, I was like, oh my God, did he have like tweets with like slurs from 2013? But no, it was, they were ending the it's not going to be on TV anymore. No new episodes of Caillou, which I don't think I even knew that, they were still producing new episodes of Caillou. I guess we're going to get into it when we get into the history, Will. But Caillou's been around for a minute now.
It has, and it's actually there's several surprises along the way. This was another very interesting kind of research roundup that I did, where I ended up learning a lot about both Caillou and things that I didn't realize that I would learn about. So yeah, we're gonna get into the genesis of Caillou. One of the I would go so far as to say one of the most hated figures on PBS Kids television.
That's right. We're kind of doing like two hated shows, maligned shows back to back, because it was Booba's last episode of For the Kids. And now I think, Caillou is universally reviled. I've heard a lot more. You want to talk about 70-30 splits. I've heard a lot less praise for Caillou than I've heard parents say that they really don't like him.
Yes, and we will get into that and our own feelings on Caillou. But let's start at the beginning here. So much like a lot of shows that we will talk about on For the Kids, and we already have, Caillou is based on a book series, which has been published since 1989 by two women who are both Canadian. They're both from Quebec. So I'm going to try and pronounce their names as they would, but I apologies for anybody who has French ancestry. I might not do these the justice that they deserve. So the authors Christine Leroux and Leroux and Hélène Desputot. So
Hélène Desputot.
Both have
Desposito. Okay, no.
Both have X's in their last names. Yeah, so I obviously won't be referring to them by their last names. So Christine, the first, is the author and publisher of Caillou and has been since 1989. Hélène is the illustrator who has produced over 100 children's books and illustrated books for authors like the great Robert Munsch. So that immediately caught my attention. I found interesting here looking up the both of them. So they're both, involved in children's literature. And at one point, both of them ended up going to court over the ownership of Caillou. In fact, the Caillou custody case went all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada.
Oh my God, that is hilarious. A house torn asunder. That is so funny. The Supreme Court.
Yeah. And the Supreme Court ruled finally that Caillou is jointly owned by both. So there you go.
Could you imagine? The Supreme Court ruled Caillou is the property of the state. We all owned Caillou.
Caillou shall be cut in half. And then we will see who truly loves him. And to date, as far as I know, more than 15 million copies of Caillou books have been sold, which is interesting because I mean, not to say that I read children's books all the time, but I don't even know if I've ever come across a Caillou book in my day.
It's true. I don't feel like I've seen them either.
So
perhaps they're more popular now. I never realized Caillou was a Canadian character. Perhaps he's more popular in French Canada. Yes,
and I would not be surprised. There's a lot of kind of French connection to Caillou.
This is all news to me, but now that I put the pieces together, I mean, Caillou is a French name.
Yes. Skipping ahead a bit, Caillou is French for pebble. So, and that's
an apt name if I ever did hear one.
And I'll tell you why in just a moment. So Caillou was initially created by his authors as a 9-month-old baby. So I think a big urban legend about Caillou, and I think we both have probably perpetrated this in our time, is that Caillou is bald because he has cancer.
That's right. He's terminally ill.
Which is not true. So
he's just young.
We're busting a myth here. The reason Caillou is bald, and I got this from the official website, the official Caillou website, which is,
is it because he trained so hard that he lost all his hair, but now he can kill enemies with one punch? Is that why?
Caillou does 100 push-ups and 100 sit-ups a day and runs for 10 kilometers. So it's just, it really is just, it's simple to draw. He was initially created as a 9-month-old with no hair, and it's just easy to draw.
So you're telling me Caillou's bald for the exact same reason that Spawn has a massive cape, which is that it makes them easier to draw.
You could say that, yeah.
That's so funny. Tom McFarlane's got on record for saying that, by the way. He's like, I'm bad at drawing bodies, so I decided to give Spawn, the devil's favorite demon, a massive cape.
What would you do if your mommy wanted you to take a bath? Sorry. I won't dwell on it. So the goal of Caillou.
Just Al Simmons being like, Wanda, that was my bath. I used to take baths in there, Wanda. Oh.
Wanda, I can't eat the sandwich because I ate before the picnic. Oh, Wanda.
I want to stay up for the party. No. Listen here there, Spawn. You're never going to stay up for the party again.
Oh, is that Gilbert? Is that the cat?
Is Gilbert the cat, the creepy, what is the clown, Moldova? No, the clown is the Violator. My God.
Yeah.
What kind of Spawn fan would I be?
So
Anyway, we got to move on, or this is gonna be like a Trojan horse spawn podcast instead of talking about Caillou the whole time.
add Spawn, add Spawn
both
to the
Bond
list.
legends, both bald legends.
So the goal of Caillou, as told by his authors, was, quote, to help children develop their own unique personalities while learning to live in harmony with the world around them.
What a curse they've put upon us. These kids could have kept their goddamn personalities in check. Oh my god.
So
That's so funny.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the psychology of Caillou, and that sounds funny off the bat, but I'm serious. Like, they actually put a lot of thought into this. So I'll start it off with another quote. Children can more easily identify with Caillou because they are so like him. So Caillou's character was influenced by the work of a French psychoanalyst named Dr. Francois Dolto. And Dr. Dolto believed in the concept of respect for the child as a person. I got the chance to kind of read an interview about this sort of thing. Essentially, what Dr. Dolto puts forth is that children are not carefree individuals. They deal with problems like you or me, Lucas, but they lack the ability to effectively communicate them. So the Caillou book series and then later the TV show are about learning how to express your feelings constructively and honestly, which will lead to a happier child. And the name of Caillou came from Dr. Dolto because in every session where she would take care of a child, she would request that the child pay one pebble or a caillou as payment for their time together. Kind of like a little gesture. So and Caillou is continually influenced by child psychologists. There's one named Francine Nadeau who referred to herself as Caillou's psychologist and collaborated on a lot of the books with Christine and Elaine. And Francine Nadeau had another quote here about Caillou, which is a little embellished, but I'll put it in here anyway. Caillou is a pint-sized hero who speaks universal truths, the joys, fears, and heartbreak of every child. So I think that helped. Like I'm telling you this now because I feel it helped put the show that we talked about in a little bit of context, because we're coming into this. I think you and I are both, as with most people, negatively tinged towards Caillou as a character.
I mean, not to get ahead of ourselves, Will, but I would say that the kind of discourse surrounding Caillou gave me a certain type of expectation about the show going in.
Yes.
And I guess we'll get into, when we get to our final thoughts, I'll say whether or not it met said expectation.
So, but I appreciated that there actually did seem to be. So, I mean, we've talked a lot about TV shows that are just kind of made to be made. You know, they have a general idea or they're basing it off a book or a property and they're just kind of, going along with it. This definitely had some manner of forethought behind why Caillou acts the way he does. And when you have that context, I think it is easier to see why he is the way he is. But we will get into that a bit later. So let's talk about the series itself. I couldn't find a lot about who kind of sparked the development of it. There are a lot of executive producers of the show. I couldn't find, the singular voice behind the show. I think the authors were involved as well. But here's something interesting for you and I. The series Caillou aired originally on Teletoon and its French station Teletoon starting in September 1997. In fact, Caillou was the first show to air on English language Teletoon.
That's absolutely wild. What a revelation.
Yeah, I know. And and literally it was like Teletoon was ground zero for the Caillou show. And I remember watching Caillou on Teletoon when it first aired. So that would have been 1997 when I would have been about 7 years old. And I remember at the time liking Caillou. Like I watched a lot of it. Did you have much experience in watching Caillou either on Teletoon? Eventually, it moved to other channels too.
No, I mean, well, yes, I had experience watching quite a bit of it, but unlike yourself, I didn't really like it. Okay. And this is something that has, I liked the puppet parts.
Yes.
When I was a kid, I liked the adventures of Caillou and his furry animal friends. But when it got to the man himself, even as a kid, I wasn't really a fan of Caillou. My memories of watching Caillou was, I watched a lot of TV as a kid. I don't know if that comes as a surprise listening to this show. But Caillou was definitely one of those shows where I would watch because there was literally nothing else on that appealed to me. Like everything else was a grown-up show. This was the only kid show on TV, so I'd watch Caillou.
So those segments that you're talking about, the ones involving the animals, Gilbert, Teddy, and Rexy, were actually a PBS Kids exclusive. So on Teletoon, they just aired the Caillou cartoons in like a
That's interesting.
half
I
hour
must
block.
have been watching the PBS version, but I mean that makes sense. This would have been in prime, watching Arthur, watching Between the Lions days.
Yeah.
One of these days we're gonna figure out we're getting a copy of an old Canadian TV guide because I keep talking about this I think Between the Lions was before Arthur or Sagwa was right before Arthur. I feel like Caillou was also in this block. Basically, when I was a kid, I would get home and watch PBS for like 4 hours. So all these shows kind of run together as I think this one was right before Arthur or after Arthur. But Caillou was somewhere in that block of television.
Yeah, and I need to dig out I have an old copy of a TV guide, so I should really do that. Maybe as like a Patreon bonus. I'll just take a little video and go through. So Caillou debuted on PBS Kids 3 years later in 2000, and that's when they debuted the wraparound segments that we're going to be talking about. From Teletoon, Caillou eventually moved to Treehouse TV in 2010, which is where it aired its last new episode in October of 2010. But there was also a Caillou YouTube series that is also available on Amazon Prime that launched in 2016. It's mainly just remakes of older episodes of Caillou in like a new animation style, probably Flash based. It's available on the Wild Brain channel. So Wild Brain, our local production house, coming back into the conversation once again. I don't believe it's available in America though. It might be region locked. And of course, as we mentioned, Caillou was canceled by PBS and will not be shown there in 2020, December 2020. However, its owning company, Wild Brain, says that Caillou will continue to air in both Canada and other countries, and they are working on getting it back on the air in another fashion in America sometime in the future. So Caillou is gone, but not forgotten. I think Caillou will be back at some point.
It's
some
ominous.
form of fashion.
I feel like Caillou's like stalking me, and I never know where he's going to show up next. It's like Robert De Niro in Cape Fear. Like Caillou's going to be in jail for 20 years, but then he'd be released, and he's going to come for us.
So Caillou, the cancellation of Caillou was met with a lot of positivity from parents and viewers alike. So let's talk a little bit about the backlash against Caillou. I mean, it's got a whole section on Wikipedia, and I feel like this is something that you and I just know, just informally through different means, because parents infamously hate Caillou, the character especially, for how whiny he is. They don't like how his tantrums are never punished. He's just kind of, when Caillou is being bad, like, it sucks and nobody likes it, which seems to be the reputation of the show. It's infected the reputation of the show to the point where, like,
out of curiosity, I looked at this this Wikipedia page, like you said.
Yeah.
Caillou to be, quite possibly the world's most universally reviled children's program.
I think that's a quote. So that's in one person's opinion. We'd have to really think about it. But
and also that person, I'm familiar with Tristan Hooper. That guy's a ghoul. That's like one of these guys who's like, safe injection sites are making my neighborhood in Vancouver unsafe. Like that guy could go, for lack of a better term. This is the Patreon show. That guy could go himself. But like,
gross.
I mean, he writes for the National Post, so no, it's starting to make sense.
Definitely don't take his word for it.
Yeah, don't take his word for it. But I mean, I have heard people say not mince words about Caillou.
Yeah, and I mean, this has actually been something that my wife and I have argued about, because my wife is very insistent that Caillou is a maligned figure. She understands him, I think, or is willing to understand him a bit better than a lot of people are. Now, of course, I can't speak to being a parent and having Caillou on every day, or potentially how I think a lot of the reason why he's so disliked is that he's feared to be a bad influence on kids, where parents feel that showing a small child throwing tantrums and eventually getting his way is not going to be productive in helping kids grow up. But that seems to be counter to what I mentioned before about the psychology behind why Caillou acts the way he does and why even the books and the show exist in the first place. So, especially after doing the research and seeing why people disliked him so much, and I think it's also after a point it became very popular to hate Caillou. I think it still is. But it started to, something about this didn't mesh before we watched the episode itself. And I was like, I wonder if this is all it's cracked up to be.
Yeah, now that I'm looking at this reception and controversy section on the Wikipedia article, it's actually mostly pulled from this National Post article.
Yeah.
And in typical, National Post is a fairly conservative Canadian newspaper. And I think I'm just skimming it. I'm not reading the full thing, but the pretense of this is that like Tristan Hopper's trying to say that, this is quote unquote an accurate portrayal of Canadian parenting and that Canada is raising a generation of psychopaths, or that Caillou's parents are so blasted on Canadian weed that they are unable to summon the presence of mind necessary to properly discipline their child. So there might be from this article, certainly, but I don't know about the entire backlash. But you might be onto something, Will, that this backlash to Caillou might be a little bit more insidious than we originally thought, and it might be actually a cultural clash of parenting styles and people mistaking emotional intelligence for letting Caillou kind of have free reign of the household. This is very interesting. Who knew the Caillou story contained such layers?
It could very well be. And that is like the quotes that you're talking about are in the Wikipedia article, which I imagine when people look up Caillou, that's where they're going. So, and could be informing the backlash to, in a sense. And I'm not saying that like, I think that there is something to being annoyed by Caillou, especially given where you are in your stage of development. But I think it's important to also understand. So it's hard for me to say because when I would have seen Caillou, I would have been 7, so a bit older than him, 7
it's
or
true.
8.
I feel like even I was younger than you, but I still didn't. It wasn't really my thing as a kid either.
Right.
I was too old for it.
And I think there was a degree. I remember when I was a kid, I didn't like it when Caillou acted like that. Like I wasn't watching the show and being like, oh, well then if I act bad, then I'll get my way. It's just like, well, he shouldn't be like that. That's just my experience.
Yeah, no. I agree. Like I remember the other child's characters seem like way less, like they have way less behavioral problems than Caillou does. Like you don't see his buddies throw tantrums as often. And I remember enjoying those characters more than Caillou himself, the characters with hair.
Sure. So I think that is all like the origins of Caillou and the backlash are important context to take into it as we look at the actual episode. And I also, of course, wanted to touch on the voice cast because there are some interesting connections here, as we always like to make. So first of all, there have been a couple of voice actors for Caillou himself. Young women have generally played Caillou. The Caillou that we heard in this episode was played by Jacqueline Linetsky, who some of you Canadian animation heads might know as being Lori on What's with Andy. She was also a voice on the Mega Babies, but I'm sorry to say that Jacqueline Linetsky died in 2003 at the age of 17, far, far too young. She was beginning to rack up a Canadian acting resume she was like on a live action YTV drama. And it would seem like her career was going somewhere, but she got in an auto accident. Very, very sad stuff. We have Mommy, a.k.a. Doris, who is played by Jennifer Seguin, a.k.a. Mrs. Crosswire from Arthur.
Wow. And you know what? I thought she sounded familiar.
See, I always think of Mrs. Crosswire. The line I think of with her is, she must have gotten lost on her way to a clown convention. So that's the line I had in my head. She was also, if you've ever watched Mona the Vampire, she was Miss Gatto on that show.
Oh my goodness. That was never on PBS, right? I would love to rewatch.
I don't think so. I think that was a YTV until we do a branching off YTV podcast. I don't know if we'll have the chance to talk about.
We'll have to wait till we open up Pandora's box with Yvonne of the Yukon. But I would love to talk about Mona the Vampire someday. That's a show I think about all the time as an adult.
Caillou's daddy, a.k.a. Boris, is played by Pat Fry. Not a whole lot of notable roles from Pat Fry, although he is a musical performer on the show, alongside the likes of familiar names like Daniel Brochu and Holly Gautier Franklin from Arthur, so the voices of Buster and Fern. We also have the narrator of the show, played by Pauline Little. Oh, I forgot to tell. This message is for patron Andrew Power. Pauline Little, the voice of Francine on Samurai Pizza Cats. So I need to DM Andrew. I've probably sent you the DM by now. And Pauline Little. This is another Arthur fact. Married to Mark Camacho, aka Oliver Frensky.
Oh my goodness, it's just one big Arthur family.
Yeah, man, it's always cool to see the different ways that these kind of Quebec-based voice actors get in with each other, and especially there you go, Caillou's grandma and Oliver Frensky are married. And finally, we only heard from her a little bit, but Caillou's little sister Rosie, played here by Jessie Vanette, aka Shigua from Sagwa the Chinese Siamese Cat. So little PBS relation there too. Okay, so let's get into it. It's time to talk about, sit down and watch an episode of Caillou. Now, I will say about the episode we watched, it's called All in a Day. It is from season 2, episode 29. I couldn't find the exact air date of it, but it is the PBS Kids one because we found the wraparound segments with Gilbert, Rexy, and Teddy. We, in fact, watched the cut of the episode that aired on WIDA Kids, which is public TV in the Virginia, Maryland, and DC area. So I always
was
like
great.
Yeah.
I love watching like VHS rips of stuff. You know, I have that anime night with my friends, and we always watch like VHS rips of like old commercials and stuff like that. So I have a soft spot for this kind of thing. And I loved, you know, I like seeing the VHS static, and like you could tell the ripped VHS audio. And then also we have like the bumpers, so we get to see like, hey, Sagwa's coming up next. And it also got me thinking like, I would rather watch Sagwa than Caillou. I think I was like, Sagwa actually was pretty good, actually.
So we always like to start by talking about the theme song. I couldn't find any information about who the singer is, who the music director is, or anything like that. But tell me what you think of this. I think it reminded me a little bit of Nickelodeon's Doug.
Oh, interesting. Doug, eh? Well, so is this... Because did the Caillou theme song change at some point? Because there's the one that's like, I want it's Caillou. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's the one that was.
That's the one. Doug doesn't sound like that, does it?
Well, so I say it sounds like Doug because Doug, the show was always very much with the mouth sounds, the and so there's a little bit of that with the Caillou. It's like do. There's a little bit of acapella.
See, I could almost barely. That's so funny. I was not paying attention to the instrument. I usually am doing a deep dive on these theme songs. I think there's something about the Caillou voice, and we might get into this later on in the episode. No disrespect to the voice actress, that kind of pierces through and overwhelms all other, pretty much everything else, whether it be the visuals or in this case the instrumentation. That like Caillou's voice totally overwhelmed anything else for me. So I didn't even notice that like a cappella stuff. Good pull,
I'm just a f***ing kid. Yeah.
Oh my god, I forgot to. I was gonna play it's not Lil B. People always attribute it to Lil B, but it's not by Lil B. What's that song where the guy's like swag like Caillou, like Caillou? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do not. I absolutely don't.
Okay, I'll pull this up. You keep talking. My phone's on 1%, so hopefully it doesn't die.
So I think I will say about the Caillou theme song, I don't think it hangs with the other great ones we've talked about, but it is for better or worse an earworm. If once you hear it,
the Caillou based freestyle.
We start off the episode with the puppet segment. So again, it's Caillou's stuffed animals, Teddy and Rexy, and his cat Gilbert, and they're all kind of puppets that are shot at like, you know, a waist high set. This time they're outside and they're all kind of minding the heat. They have kind of, I suppose, distinctive characters. Like Teddy is kind of nothing. Rexy talking a baby voice all the time. So I actually kind of found him more annoying than Caillou, if I'm being honest. Like, but he's not around for very long. And Gilbert is very kind of laid back and mature.
I really like Gilbert.
I like the voice work on Gilbert, yeah, and I also do like the cat design. But I remember watching the PBS Caillou show. I know that one of his character things is that he likes to create odes to things like poems. So he's very much like the older sibling of the three. And I do like his voice. I find it's a very distinctive character versus Teddy, and like Rexy, I guess, is it's like he's the baby, gotta love him, but Teddy's just kind of nobody.
No, yeah, it's true. I love that Gilbert's a thespian.
The puppet work seems to be pretty good. I don't have a whole lot to say about the segments that aren't the animated ones. Like, I think the puppetry is pretty good. The voice work is good, like nothing.
I will say, at least in the episode we watched, it's weird that they seem to have like nothing to do with the actual episodes of Caillou. So throughout this episode, we keep cutting back to these puppets, and the whole thing seems to be about how they are trying to beat the heat and they can't stand the hot day. But nothing in the animated episodes relates to that really at all.
Yeah. And with these animated segments, so we go from animated segment to puppet segment, which is ostensibly real life. With the animated segments, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the story because they are as basic as it gets. I'll just kind of briefly describe them, but there are things within the segments that I do want to talk about. So this first segment, they don't even have like title cards or anything. So there's no like Caillou does this. It's just in this one, Caillou helps mom out with laundry, and then he doesn't have any clothes to wear, so he plays dress up with daddy's clothes. So I wanted to talk about the look of the show, the animation. I liked it. I actually liked it a lot. What did you think?
So that was something that I was surprised, is that the way everyone dresses in this show is so distinct.
Yes.
Like everybody's wearing these, Caillou included, everybody's wearing these like primary colors, and it makes them look like they're either wearing retro like Patagonia fleece pullovers, like everybody's decked from head to toe in color block Patagonia, or they're all wearing like Teddy Fresh. Do you know that brand, Teddy Fresh?
No.
If you Googled like Teddy Fresh hoodie right now, you'll know what I'm talking about. But everybody looks like, they're wearing like head to toe Teddy Fresh colorways. So I agree. I do think, and you know me, I'm always a proponent of pre-Flash animation, and I think that I'm looking at Caillou getting shaken on this dryer right now, and it looks really good. There's a lot of frames.
Yes, it's very smooth.
And by a lot, I mean like two, actually. Now, him getting shaken on this dryer was not that good of an example, but the show looks good.
Yes, I wrote that the animation's fairly smooth. The colors really pop. They're all primary colors, and they're very distinctive to the eye. Each scene, and I'm sure that this is the idea, it looks like a watercolor from a Caillou storybook. You notice that in a lot of the scenes, the edges of the frame are like whited out a little bit, so it looks like something that was drawn. You're not supposed to necessarily think that this is real life. It's like a still from the book come alive, which I really appreciated. I thought that was a cool way to do it.
No, it's interesting. Like a show like Arthur, as good as Arthur is, it has a totally different art style than the original Arthur books. The original Arthur books look very different than Mark Brown picture books, where Arthur's got the long nose. So it's always interesting when you see shows that are adaptations of children's shows or for instance, newspaper comics, and they retain the original art style. There's numerous kid shows based on children's books where they totally overhaul the look. But is this what the Caillou books look like? They just kind of look like this?
More or less, I think, from what I've seen of them. I think it's just you're talking about, you're comparing like the original illustrators, what that looks like. It's like a TV approximation. It's like you get an animation studio to do what an illustrator was doing. So there's going to be a little bit of difference, and over time it kind of homogenized into the look that the TV show has.
As did Arthur, right? Over time, the book started just to look like the show.
Big time. Throughout this, we kind of see flashes of Caillou's more negative traits, but they don't really stick around for very long. Like he gets kind of upset and huffy that he doesn't have any clothes to wear, and he gets a little bit whiny when he's like, when dad's like, you can wear some of my clothes, and he's like, I can't wear big boy clothes. But it doesn't really stick around for very long. So we didn't get the full blast of bad Caillou.
No, I agree. And at this point, this is when I was starting to think to myself, are people giving Caillou a bad rap? Like, yeah, he's acting like a child, but I didn't find him overtly petulant. I was like, okay, he's 4. Like, He doesn't understand. He's like, and the first thing we see in this episode is Caillou trying to be helpful. He's trying to bring his clothes down to his mom. So I was Caillou was rehabilitating his image before my eyes. I was like, you know what? Sure, he's whining and he's confused, but he's like a 4-year-old. So he hadn't done anything like overtly malicious in this ep. And so I was starting to think that maybe Caillou's reputation had been embellished a tad at this point.
We'll have to see if that's true as we go along. I actually think that this segment was really sweet. Like in the end, it's Daddy playing dress up with Caillou, and then they take a picture together, and it's like a sweet childhood memory. And it's nice to see a father figure be so involved with a child's playtime. Like he turns, dressing up Caillou. It's like a little bit of playtime for them, a bit of time to bond. I just thought it was really sweet. I liked it. It was like nothing. There was no conflict. There was no real conflict. It was just kind of like, that's really nice. So it was a good first step. Reintroducing myself to Caillou. There's a live action segment after this where the idea is that all three of them are very hot. It's a very hot day outside. So Rexy wants to play a game where they pretend that it isn't hot. And we're really drip fed this story as we go along. Again, not a whole lot to say.
Very, very like Taoist or rather very like Tibetan Buddhism, just, in the mind's eye, I'm not hot. Like I shall bear the heat. I'm just going to pretend I'm not hot. It's, Rexy getting metaphysical on us.
Well, as Gilbert says later, it's mind over matter.
Hey, if you don't mind, it don't matter. I'm with you on that one, Gilbert.
So the second animated segment, essentially, Mommy and Daddy are having a party with their adult friends, which, man, rip. I wish I could have a party with my adult friends. And Caillou wants to join the party because it sounds exciting, but it's his bedtime. So there's a little bit of conflict arising there.
It's funny because this episode actually really transported me to being this age. I remember when my parents would have like dinner parties and have people over, and this was like definitely the type of kid I was, where like I could hear everybody like from my room. This is a very real memory I have of like I could hear people like playing Trivial Pursuit and drinking wine from my room and wanting to be involved and wanting to be a part of the action, because I was like a pretty social, outgoing, some might say annoying and ADHD ridden, but pretty I like talking to the adults as a kid. And so again, 2 for 2, I didn't find Caillou that annoying in this episode at all. In fact, I empathized with him because I remembered when I had these exact same feelings the way that Caillou was feeling in this episode.
It's a near universal experience, and I think the narrator also does a good job in most of these of giving us Caillou's thought pattern, because for this it's like Caillou wanted to go to the party. Parties are always fun, even though his parents are like, this isn't going to be very fun for you. But it's like to a kid, that doesn't exactly translate. There's a part where there is a part where Caillou's mom is like asking like, Caillou, what do you think we should play as a game at this party? And Caillou pictures everybody in face paint, but it just looks like, in Caillou's mind's eye, that this is some sort of freak like Kiss fan meetup. Yeah, his dad is the star child. I noticed that. How about I'm glad we have you on here for many reasons, but of course because of your eye for fashion. How about Dad's Technicolor fit when he and Caillou go to the grocery store?
That's where I was really thinking about like, everybody looks like they're wearing like Patagonia. Like Caillou's dad looks like he's wearing like all these like 90s like the really color blocky like polo or Tommy Hilfiger stuff. Like everybody's wearing these like pastel color block mountain wear inspired. I love the fashion in this show. I was really surprised. Later on, like Caillou's babysitter has this like big pullover on. And I agree, Will. Even the way Caillou's dressed with his little like yellow shirt with his little yellow Henley with the red trim, with the exception of Caillou's mom, who's kind of wearing like an ugly muumuu, everybody's got great. The menswear in Caillou specifically looks great.
I was so confused as to what his babysitter Julie was wearing. It was like a rain slicker.
Yeah, no, she looks like Paddington Bear or something.
Yeah, a little bit. So yeah, I also said like, this is where I had the notes. So like, we had a good first animated segment where he was, a little crappy, but like not too bad. I wrote here, I must admit, watching this as an adult is like waiting for a bomb to go off. When does the kid snap? It's like that whole thing about It's like it's like that whole thing of like Alfred Hitchcock saying like it's more suspenseful if you show people that there's a bomb under the table and then it will go off in 5 minutes. I'm just like, when is he going to get shitty? Like, when is it going to happen? So I thought it was going to happen here when, I thought he was going to like pitch a fit or cry because he can't be included downstairs. But like you said, Lucas, I think this is almost a near universal experience of like your parents are having a party somewhere else in the house for their adult friends, and you want to go there because it sounds exciting, but it's not a party for you. From my limited experience with my little niece Elodie, who is also just 4, just a kid who's 4, his behavior is pretty consistent, and thankfully he's not like pitching a fit or anything. He just kind of keeps wandering downstairs, and they have to keep putting him back to bed.
Yeah, I wonder what like modern episodes of Caillou are like, because a lot of these problems could be solved by like, just give him the iPad.
Caillou, much like Fleabag's boyfriend, leaves a dinosaur behind, so he has to come back downstairs. I also wanted to mention here, I liked the little musical themes in play throughout the animated segments. They're very jaunty and upbeat. There's a lot of like, gosh, I wish I could, there's some nice like little recorder music. There's some xylophone stuff. I don't know. I'm really bad at identifying instruments, but it was really, really pleasant to listen to and set a nice, almost calming mood, which I appreciated. Like I said, I was like, when is Caillou gonna snap? But he never really did, thankfully. We get another puppet segment here. So they're pretending that it's actually cold instead of being as hot as it is, and it's kind of having mixed results. We'll go to the third animated segment here, where Caillou goes on a picnic with his friend Clementine. And the whole thing is that he eats too much before the picnic and isn't hungry, but then they play tag, and he is. Again, not a huge amount of conflict here. Lucas, I have another question for you. I always have these questions for you. We see a little thing here because Caillou and Mommy bring cupcakes to the picnic, and Caillou drops some frosting on the floor, and Gilbert kind of licks at it. Can animals eat frosting and not get sick?
Yeah, well, I mean, the answer to this question, Will, is usually a little bit, right? Like if if a cat ate a whole thing of frosting, it would probably get sick.
Right.
But a cat can definitely eat a little bit of frosting and be A-okay.
Okay.
Everything in moderation. Yeah, you shouldn't be shoving. But also, like, I understand your kind of sense of worry, because there are certain things, like for instance, like chocolate. Like if a dog eats a little bit of chocolate, it could die, right? Because of the way it affects the dog's heart. That's not the way like frosting is. So an animal can eat frosting, but if they eat too much, it won't be good for them. But it's not like the death sentence that chocolate can be.
Another Arthur connection here. Caillou's friend Clementine is played by Bridget Tierney, who is the voice of Jenna on Arthur.
And I really like Clementine. Like in contrast to Caillou, who's kind of, he is a little bit annoying, but he's mostly kind of a blank slate.
Yes.
Clementine seems to have her wits about her, and maybe it's just I just have an affinity for the Jenna voice, but I like her.
Yeah, and I appreciate it here, and this, I kind of got a flashback when I was kind of going through the Caillou stuff. His friend group is pretty diverse. Like, Caillou is white, but Clementine is black. He has another friend who is Asian, and then he has his male friend, whose name I forget, is a ginger. Yeah,
I know. The worst of them all. Although I'm just joking.
In many ways, it's really cool that this show... And even in the party segment, like a lot of Mommy and Daddy's friends are like of different races. So it's cool to just casually model diversity like that. I appreciated it.
And hey, I mean, if this is supposed to be French Canada, even more so, if you go to any major Canadian city, especially out west, you're going to see levels of diversity. I know for places like Montreal and for instance, Montreal's actually pretty diverse, but in some places in Quebec, they could have trouble with certain stuff like that. But so it's especially a good model for areas like that.
Not much else to say about this one. It's just like Caillou ate too much, and then it's just like, go play tag, and then he gets hungry on the way.
Again, Will, we're waiting for the bomb to go off.
Yeah, he wasn't too bad. He was just a little sad when he couldn't eat the sandwich that Clementine made for him, but it was okay in the end. The next puppet segment, we introduced the fourth puppet, who I forgot about, Dee Dee the squirrel. and is pretending that the sandbox is like the ocean and is splashing around in it. So she and Rexy decide to do that to try and pretend to cool off instead of pretending that everything is cold.
Bad idea.
guess.
The sand absorbs the heat. It would make you more warm.
After this, we get a musical segment. So I remember these musical segments were a part of the Caillou structure, and we get to it. It is the song "All in a Day." So, Lucas, who sings this song?
Who sings "All in the Day"? Oh my goodness, I don't know. What should I have recognized?
You couldn't tell just by
Wait.
hearing it?
I have to re-listen. Give me a second, Will. I'm on the scene right now.
I'm a little bit surprised at you, Lucas. I can't believe that you heard that person singing and you couldn't immediately identify it just based on the podcast we've been doing for 4.5 years now. That you can't identify this person's voice.
It's right after the sandbox segment?
Yes. Yep. So Lucas is going to take a listen. I know, and I think I would, of course, we always encourage you guys to watch the show along with us, and this is available on YouTube. Take a listen to All in a Day and see if you can recognize who the voice is before I do the big reveal. It's funny to watch the kids kind of go through the choreography. They're all at different stages of like awkward.
Oh my goodness. Is this Buster's voice?
It's Buster's voice. That's Daniel Brochu.
Okay. See, okay. I apologize, Will. That was me not being on my A game. I was distracted by the visuals of this. I actually really liked the way this like little music video was shot with the mix of the green screen backgrounds and then these kids in their yellow and red outfits kind of doing their I'm putting air quotes around this synchronized dance. And all this like sped up footage, but this looks all like kind of fun. There's all these weird like Dutch angles and stuff, and these kids running around these drawn backgrounds. It looks good, but yeah, I guess it looks so good that I completely didn't notice Buster's voice. My goodness.
Yeah. And we go from that to, I do remember this being a segment as well. It was whenever the camera is the transition point. It's basically Caillou's A Word From Us Kids segment. It's these live action segments. This one involved the kid and his mom going to the reptile zoo. And the only thing I really had to say about this, it's just like, it really is, they're just looking at different kind of bugs and lizards and whatnot. There's a really great shot where the kid like really regards the snake, like the snake that the handler is holding. He really mean mugs the snake. It's just
He's like, it's like he's daring him to do something.
From this, we go back to the second last puppet segment where Teddy and Gilbert eventually decide to go swimming in the sand with everybody else. And we go to the final animated segment where Caillou takes a bath, which the animation looked a little bit different. I would almost venture to guess that this is probably one of the earlier Caillou, and Caillou sounded a little different himself. I wondered if maybe this was the first voice actor for Caillou.
Yeah. And the colors on like the dad's sweater are more muted and stuff like that.
So it could have been earlier in the production cycle. And eventually, so it's Caillou doesn't want to take a bath. Mommy has to run around to find him and eventually gets him into the tub, and he really doesn't want to take a bath, but then they discover that bath time can be playtime too. There is a guitar part in this episode. It's when Caillou is hiding under Rosie's bed that sounds remarkably like the track from Undertale when you go into the hotel. It's
I haven't played Undertale. I just know about it from cultural osmosis, so I can't say.
There's a very sparse kind of acoustic guitar track that, if you know what I'm talking about, let me know in the comments below or on Discord. This is definitely the worst that Caillou gets in terms of how against taking a bath he is. He's very like, I don't want to take a bath, and he's like, when he's in the bath, he's like kind of throwing stuff around. He's really making a big deal out of it. But I gotta be honest, like, this is pretty typical kid behavior.
It's true. I remember, again, this is one of the things where it's like, I think I empathized with Caillou too much. I too did not want to take a bath back in the day and put together a little bit of a fit.
And I think it's important to remember, again, part of the psychology behind it is that kids don't have the mental faculties that adults do to regulate their emotions and to not respond with like, you know, if you and I strike our hand on the wall or something and we go like, or something, and or just like get mad and in an instant. That's how kids feel about like practically everything. Their brains haven't developed enough. So Caillou, there's no other way for him to go about saying that he doesn't like to take a bath other than saying I don't want to.
Yeah.
And yes,
If my roommate started to refuse to get into the shower and he was like, Lucas, I don't want to go into the shower, I would call him a freak and be like, what the hell are you talking about? Get in the damn shower. But Caillou, on the other hand, is a 4-year-old.
Yeah. And I think it's, at least from my perspective, it's just like, it's pretty understandable. Now, to the other side of things, as you said before, Caillou's voice, very high pitched. So it really can, it did for me a bit. It can really hit the annoyance button. I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of parents who have this on day after day. I imagine Caillou's voice eventually will just get to you.
Will, you have hit on exactly what I was thinking when watching through this, which is that it wasn't Caillou's actions or the writing that made the character annoying. Like, I was expecting, Caillou to be just this demon from all the like things we've heard about it and from like kind of the cultural consensus around Caillou. And it turned out that for me, the big problem was just that I've kind of found the voice annoying. And, no harm, no foul to the voice actor. And she's definitely a very esteemed voice actor. This is there's direction, they want the voice to sound this way, right? But I found the voice annoying. It kind of reminds me, you doing an impression of it reminds me of when you do an impression of that character from 8 Crazy Nights. Right. And so that voice is going to be annoying, especially when that voice is like complaining, right? Which is Caillou tends to do. But it's not actually the complaining itself that I found annoying. I thought that was very typical 4-year-old behavior like you're describing. It's just that the voice kind of notches it up to another level. So I think that, we have this might not be the example of kind of Caillou's worst behavior. Like reading that Wikipedia article I saw, there's sometimes where he like pinches his sister and doesn't get punished and stuff like that. And so maybe we're not seeing the worst Caillou has to offer, but I'm starting to suspect that it's not actually Caillou's actions that make him so maligned. It's just that maybe the voice is a little bit annoying.
It's the package. And it's also like whenever he gets angry, like the way that they draw his angry face, it is like, it's a little punchable. Like
I agree.
I'm not saying that you should in any case. I'm not advocating for that sort of thing. But like you look at it and it's just like, oh, it's such a stinky little face. They're just like I can see how it could again push another button of annoyance or even anger. Like it's really the package that Caillou is wrapped up in with his voice and the way he looks that makes it unfortunate, I guess. But yeah, and it really is just kind of like kids are like this.
Yeah.
So I think at least for when I was a kid, I had grown out of that sort of thing because I was like twice Caillou's age when I'm watching it. But you tend to forget. And I say this from the perspective of somebody who doesn't have kids right now, and I'm also speaking, considering our Patreon, to mostly people who are also without kids of their own. You may have younger siblings or younger children in your life to some degree, but not speaking as parents. And again, I really feel for the parents who their kid latched onto Caillou and had to watch this day after day because that's what you'll have to do. It's okay to be annoyed by Caillou. I want to make that clear, but I find that the argument of he's a bad influence on kids to be a little dubious, especially considering what I have looked up and how I believe now Caillou to be, like what level I believe him to be operating on as a character.
I totally agree, Will. I feel like we've uncovered something here with this episode. I feel like we've been on a journey with Caillou where I was expecting going into this like hating it nonstop, agreeing with the discourse, saying that, Caillou is this tyrant, this menace. And in reality, I think Caillou is actually a fairly accurate portrayal of a 4-year-old and the way a 4-year-old deals with their emotions. And I think just because it's an animated character, and we're so used to kind of animated characters being like a larger than life representation, right? No child is actually like Bart Simpson. Bart Simpson's an exaggerated version. Yeah. But seeing an animated character kind of act very true to the way a 4-year-old is, except they animate the face and it has a cartoon voice, inherently makes the whole thing more annoying. But I don't think it's because, and I agree. I don't think Caillou is any sort of bad influence on children. In fact, I think Caillou is merely a reflection of children.
Yes.
And
Go figure, like, you and I aren't the biggest fans of Caillou the character because we're adults. Like, it's not for us. And like, I know that that's the whole premise of, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this podcast? We are talking about it in terms of like a general quality. But I think it's one thing, when you look at the fact that the Wikipedia page has such a long section on the controversy and the hatedom for Caillou, and you see these people who make the YouTube videos or the posts or whatever, and just like, hate Caillou so much. I'm just like, why do you care? Like, it speaks to me of like, I don't know, somebody who probably shouldn't be thinking about this hard.
It reminds me, it's evocative of, we've talked about this kind of era all the time on our various shows, but it reminds me of early 2000s Newgrounds of like shoot Barney and kill the Teletubbies and that kind of stuff, where it's like, this is misdirected energy, right? This isn't for you. Like,
yes.
where is this antagonism towards these characters? It just so happens that there was never a National Post article about Barney or the Teletubbies and how they were kind of bad influences on children, right? So
right.
Herein lies the difference with Caillou, is that it's kind of become this weird cultural discourse around parenting, which I don't know if you were on Twitter during Being Dad, Will.
Yes, I was.
That is a right vein for people to get upset, is when we start talking about parenting styles and that kind of stuff online. So it makes sense that I guess it's become so kind of controversial. But I think in watching this one episode, that controversy might have been stirred up from nothing. And I think it's people making a mountain out of a molehill.
Well, and your kind of extra insight there on the National Post itself and where these ideas of like, Caillou doesn't have good parents or like comes from. It's just like, you're right. You can read into it a kind of conservative tinge that is maybe going away from the idea of the property, which is to let kids feel their feelings and model for them a way to feel those feelings appropriately so that they can learn from their behavior and be happier in the future, which is, I think it's a bit more of a liberal idea of parenting as opposed to something a bit stricter. Let's just quickly finish off the episode here. The end of the pub segments is that Rexy leaves the sandbox and the game is over and it's back to being a very hot day. We do get a kind of wrap up segment from Rexy where he narrates the artwork that you as a kid can do at home. He's talking about like making snow angels or using clay or, coloring things and all the kind of stuff that you can do at home. Also of note, he pronounces the color turquoise. He says that he's turquoise. So I always think that's funny. And that's basically where the episode ends off. It always ends off with a big Rexy hug for your hard work. So I feel like we did a little bit of summing up there just a couple of minutes ago. But Lucas, coming out of it, have your feelings changed on Caillou?
I think definitely. I think, like I said before, I went into it expecting, Caillou to be the villain that he's been made out to be. And I was kind of both disappointed because I think that would have made for a funny episode, but also kind of delightfully surprised to realize that, oh no, this has kind of been made out to be something it's not, and he just kind of acts like a 4-year-old. And yes, the voice is a little bit annoying, and yes, he has a punchable face, and but he's not this kind of horrible monster that I've heard about. And I was kind of surprised by, the last thing I expected Caillou to remind me of was myself. And so like with for some of those segments, like the bath one and the wanting to go to the party one, I was actually very surprised by how much it was kind of reminiscent of my own childhood. I don't know if that says more about me than it does about Caillou. So yes, now the question that we always ask at the end of For the Kids is, would I show this to my current child? Like if I was to have a kid, do I think this holds up? I think the animation absolutely does. In regards to would I show it to a kid, probably maybe not. If I listen, I'd let my kid watch Caillou if they were really into it. But if I could avoid hearing this voice all day, I probably would continue to do so.
Right, not for moral reasons, but for your own sanity.
Exactly. And like I said before, that little Sagwa clip at the start was like, maybe. What if? Hey, I was like, yeah, I know that Caillou's coming up, but if we wait an hour, we could watch Sagwa. How about that?
Hey man, Between the Lions is on at 6.
Oh, there we go.
Let's go
Now,
do something else.
Yeah, now we're talking.
Yeah, I actually found this a great surprise in the sense of how I felt about Caillou coming out of this. I felt that this was really something that, and I mean, go figure, this happens all the time. We have figures that our culture tends to malign that perhaps don't deserve it. Now, I will say that if you're annoyed by Caillou, if you really don't like him, you're not wrong to think so. And I understand why. I just think that the energy that some people put towards hating him is misguided. It's just like, okay, we got a joke on the John Oliver show or whatever about it. It's just like, all right, let's just kind of, it's a show for babies. Let's kind of take it down here. I really liked the way that the show was presented. Like we talked about, I liked the music. I liked the visuals. I thought the voice acting was good, and good in the sense of like, I think that they all did a good job for what they were going for. Whether or not you kind of like the pitch of Caillou's voice is only for you to decide. And I was pleasantly surprised. Like, yeah, we do. In terms of the question, would I show this to a kid? I wouldn't not show it to a kid, which is before we started this episode, I was like, no way, I'm not going to show my kids Caillou. And now it's like, like it's fine. Like in terms of things that they could be watching, I think there are way more annoying things to have on in the background. Now I say that having not watched like a full blast of Caillou Monday to Friday. So I might change my tune quickly on that if they discover the Wild Brain YouTube channel or something. But I would classify this as a pleasant surprise. And it was nice to kind of go back. Caillou, a little bit nostalgic for me. So it was interesting to go back and see it from a different light. And I'm glad that I can kind of feel like I'm thinking my own thoughts about Caillou rather than being told what to think. And it turns out my wife was right all along. That you can just put that's the subheading to my autobiography. Will Young, turns out my wife was right all along. Okay, so that's the end of this episode of For the Kids. Now, I want to thank you very much for joining us for this. We encourage you to leave a comment below. If you have any memories of Caillou, if you have any feelings about Caillou you really want to get out there, we encourage you to do so, or to start a conversation on the Discord. We would love to hear from you. So, of course, it is my turn to pick a show. We had a poll from the listeners, and now it's time for me to pick. Now, I'm gonna bend the rules here a little bit for this one. I'm gonna, this is the show that Lucas and we created, and I feel like I have some authorial power to flex a little bit of muscle here. So I wanna show some love to maybe an underappreciated portion of our Patreon subscribers. So the next time on For the Kids, we're going to be talking about Word Girl. I want to see what the fuss is all about. I think it's high time. Word Girl has been coming second last for too long, and I want to see what all the fuss is about. We even had a couple of people in the Discord saying, oh, I think Will and Lucas would genuinely enjoy Word Girl. All right, well, let's have at it then. Let's see if Word Girl is really what it's all about.
I'm excited, Will.
This is like Ruffman. I have no idea what to expect. I've never seen an episode. I've never interacted with Word Girl in my life.
Yeah, no, I've seen the ads for Word Girl, but I've never seen an episode. So it's exciting. We're going into uncharted territory.
Uncharted territory will be on the next episode of For the Kids, a PBS Kids podcast. My name is Will Young. That's Lucas Mancini. Remember, never be afraid to challenge your preconceptions about a piece of media or anything for that matter.